Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Good News Podcast. And today we have an episode that I am just unbelievably excited about. This is a young entrepreneur who has incredible creativity, incredible energy. You are going to love this one. This is Marchelle Mckenzie. She has just recently, in fact, just over the last year, started a business called Butter and Spice. But when you hear her story, it's like she's been doing this for years. She has packed a ton into her life already. Incredible experience, incredible courage that she has to lead her business. Guys, get ready, fasten your seatbelts. This is a great one. Let's dive in. Well, hey, everybody. Great to be with you on the Good News Podcast today. Thanks so much for joining us. Glad you could check this out. I have no doubt we, all of us are going to be inspired by Marchelle's story. I've just gotten to know Marchelle a little bit, really through the pandemic is how we got introduced. Actually, It's a funny story that maybe we'll get into that one later because that's cool. But Marchelle, let's jump in. I just love your entrepreneurial spirit. I just the way that you are promoting your business, the creativity that you're offering, the courage to jump in to all of this. Love to hear a bit about that entrepreneurial spirit and mind that you have, and where did that come from?
Oh my goodness. I would say it came from my parents. Like growing up, my dad was always like, okay, you're not going to go to work and get a 9 to 5. You're going to have your own business. Like you're going to do this. You have to strive to be better. All of this stuff that he's always telling us, both my siblings, all of us are this way, right? We kind of have this like drive, right? And then more recently, I think it's now I'm kind of wanting to set a good example as well, right? Because I have a younger sister. She's 13 years old. I want her to look and be like, you know what? Her sister's out there and she's doing the thing and she's trying to build something good for herself and better the community and whatnot, right? So that's kind of, I would say that's where it comes from. And a lot of it is like, I think, wanting to see my visions come true too. Yeah. Right. Like I remember when I was younger, my brother and I would sell cupcakes like door to door. Right.
No
we
way.
had little flyers that we would put out. Right. And to see, and then it was different phases. Right. So we'd done it together maybe when I was 13. Right. And then when I went into high school, I kind of did it again and I sold cookies during high school.
Yeah.
Right. And to see kind of evolve over the years into what I guess I wasn't calling it Butter and Spice then, but now what is Butter and Spice,
Wow.
right? And I think my parents still have a flyer and it was Marchelle and Malcolm's cupcakes.
No way. That's great.
Right. And a little like Microsoft Paint job on the flyer and like the phone number to call, which was our parents' phone number at the time, right? And I think even we were only selling to family members, like we weren't.
Sweet. And how old were you?
I was 13 and then I think my brother would have been 11.
Okay. Amazing. So food, like, and definitely has been a part of what you've been interested in. It sounds like and not just eating, because a lot of us are interested in eating food, but you're interested in the creating of it and the providing of it. And I mean, your journey has been really cool. As I was just checking out where you've been. Like you've been in New York City and you've been in London. You've gone to culinary school.
Yeah.
And I'd love to just hear a bit about the ride, the journey from being a 13-year-old selling cupcakes to family members to where you are today. It's amazing.
So I would say like I know my whole life, like I've always loved to bake and I've always loved to cook, right? And I know once I went into high school, I was kind of like, you know what, like maybe I should focus on my studies and whatnot. And then it came to my final year and everyone was applying for for university and colleges. And I was kind of like, you know what? I don't want to go to university and college. Like I kind of want to be a chef, right? And at the time I'd kind of like mentioned it to my parents, right? My dad was like, whatever you want to do, right? And I know my mom at the time, she was like, you need to get a degree first, go to culinary school after, right? So I ended up taking a year off after high school.
Mm.
I did some college credits. I did some more high school credits because I was, unsure as to what direction to go in. Or I would say I was sure of the direction I was going, but I was trying to appease
Yeah,
my
yeah.
parents.
Just hadn't quite made the decision finally.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And it was during that time off, and I ended up working. I think I was working at Longo's at the time in the prepared food section, and they put me in the back making all the food.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, I really love this, right? But still, I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should still go to university or whatever. And then it wasn't until like it was about time to start applying again. And I turned to my parents and I was like, you know what? I really want to go to culinary school, right? And my mom was like, no way, no way. You need to get a degree first. Do the culinary thing after. Do food science first, and then go back. And I was like, but I really want to go to culinary school, right? So we went back and forth for months. We went back and forth.
Like
right?
you and your mom back and forth.
Yeah,
trying
back
to figure
and forth.
This out. Yeah.
Right. And she was like adamant I wasn't going to culinary school, and I was adamant I'm going. Right. And we went back and forth for months. And then my dad, his brother at the time lived in New Jersey, right? And like very close to the border of New York City. It's just a train ride away. And my dad, I don't know what conversation transpired between the two of them, but it was said that my brother and I would be going to visit him, and I would be going to look at culinary schools in New York City, right? Because I think my parents had done some research, and they're like, okay, if she's going to be a chef, we're going to send her to the best chef.
Okay.
The best culinary school.
And then you're going
right?
to get to do into the cooking area, but get a degree as well.
Exactly, right?
Everybody's winning here.
Exactly. So I don't know what the conversation that my dad had with his brother, but the trip was planned, right? So my brother and I went to New Jersey. We stayed with him for up to 1 week. My brother didn't really come into the city at all. He was just there visiting our cousins, and it was my uncle and I. He was taking me all over the place to look at different schools and whatnot, right? So we went to, I believe, the French Institute. There was another one, I can't remember the name, and then the Culinary Institute of America, right? So the French Institute, we went and we were in New York City for a whole day. We saw the school, and we ended up having lunch at their like student run restaurant or whatever. And a little backstory on the French Culinary Institute. It's the school that like Bobby Flay went to, right? And so that's kind of what my parents, because at the time Bobby Flay was like the chef on television, right? Nice. So they're like, oh, we'll send her there, right? But we were in the restaurant, we were having lunch, and my uncle was like, oh, how did you like the school? And I'm like, oh, it was really good. And they ended up asking me some questions. They're like, where do you see your life in 5 years from now? And I was like, I see myself running a restaurant, working in a restaurant, and it's doing my own thing, right? And they're like, okay, cool, this is the place for you, as they all say, right? And we were having the lunch, and an earthquake actually happened.
Oh my goodness!
In the middle of New York on the day we were having lunch, and I remember looking, I was like, oh, Uncle Peter, did you feel that? And he was like, no. And then my aunt, who was working in a high rise, she came home that day and she's like, oh my God, like, did you see, did you feel the earthquake? Wow. And we're like, what are you talking about? But it's just, there's these small signs that have happened that kind of, I was like, okay, this is it, right? Wow. And then the further down into the week, we went to the Culinary Institute of America, right? Same thing. We saw the campus, and it is huge, right? Like the Culinary Institute looks like, I always tell people it looks like Hogwarts, right? It is this massive campus with student housing, all that. And even the history of the school, it used to be a place where the military would come back to retrain to go back into society, right? And so over time it changed, and it's now a full-fledged culinary school. They offer a baking program and a culinary program at the same time. but it was the closest school to a traditional university, right? So my parents like, okay, this is a school. Because I think maybe I was leaning more towards the French Culinary Institute, but then the earthquake because of the earthquake, right? But my parents were like, you know what? You need structure. You need, if you're going to be going to school out of Canada, then you need structure. You need to be on
Okay.
campus. You need to have security and whatnot, right? And the Culinary Institute offered all of that,
Nice.
right? And I don't regret the decision at all. Like I loved going to the Culinary Institute of America. I met some of my closest friends I've ever had. And even just the program, being in the program, it opened a lot of doors for me, right? Like when it came to my internship and getting a job after graduation, it was almost, I don't want to say easy, but it people looked and they're like, oh, Culinary Institute of America. Okay, no problem, right? So it did open up a lot of doors for me. From there, I was able to work at a 3 Michelin starred restaurant and then go on to work at a 2 Michelin star restaurant and 1 and so on and so forth. But it was nice that my parents saw that. They're like, okay, you need like a stepping stool, right? Like you're not just going to go to any like willy-nilly culinary school. We're going to do this right. But yeah, no, that's kind of how I got into going to school in the States. And then of course, when you go to school in the States, you get to work in America for a year after you graduate. So I took full advantage of that, worked my year, came back home. And
then you went to London.
And then I went to London. So before I went to London, I went to work in Lake Louise.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, wow.
And I was working at
You had some pretty like cool spots, but also big spots in hospitality. New York, Lake Louise.
Yes.
London.
So I went to Lake Louise, worked at the Chateau Lake Louise for a year and a half. And then because of the structure of the way that job is, you work where you live and there's not any bills. So I was able to save a lot of money. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm 23 and I've saved up so much money. What am I going to do? Oh, I'm going to go travel. Right. So, and at the time, my parents had just moved to Malaysia and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this big trip. Right. And then we're going to end and I'm going to stay in London for 2 years. Right. So that's how I ended up in London, is just I would say the foundation of working in Lake Louise helped me get there. Right. If I hadn't gone to Lake Louise, I don't think I would have done a lot of the traveling that I've done.
Yeah. Amazing how one step leads to the other.
I know.
And there's 2 words that are coming to mind as you're telling your story here, Marchelle. One is the courage that it took you to make and I love the respect that you had for your parents and your mom and just trying to wrestle that down together, and the way that all worked out in the end. But it sounds like you were being gracious and wanting to listen, but also you felt, and the other word was calling, the courage and the calling. You have a calling on your life to the food industry, and that's cool that you had the courage to pursue it all the way along, and still do as you start your own business, and lots of risk as you go to do these things. And I mean, so I'd love to hear a bit about where have you needed courage along the way as you think back to where you've been and even where you are right now.
Honestly, I would say it's just before I started my business, I actually took a look at that, and I was like, okay, what do I have to lose? Right? I'm back here and I'm essentially back in the GTA, having been gone for so many years, right? What do I have to lose, right? I don't really have anything set up here. It was kind of a brand new start, right?
Okay.
So I looked at it and I was like, I have nothing to lose, right? It's either I fail or I succeed, right? And even if I fail, I can start again. Right. That's always kind of been my idea going into things. It's always been, well, I can start again anyway. Right. So getting the courage, I would say the courage with the business. Oh my goodness. It's like every step of the way, every decision that I make, it's like, is this the right decision? Like, don't get me wrong. I still battle within myself and I'm like, did I make the right call? Did I do this? Should I be doing business with this person? Right? So it's still every step of the way, I'm like, doubting myself a little bit,
Yeah.
but I'm always like, but you know what? I have nothing to lose, right? And if I go with that mentality, okay, if I have nothing to lose, then the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Right? I'm sure the further along I get, I'll be like, oh, I have a little bit to lose, right?
Yeah.
But as I go, I'm just like, okay, I have nothing to lose. And then next step, I have nothing to lose, right? So that's kind of the way I move through life, right? And even with my traveling, I would say with the traveling, I'm kind of like, oh, I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to go there. So that's kind of I've needed courage for that. But then in some aspects, I do hold back a little bit. Like, for example, you would think a chef would go to all these different countries and try all the food, but I get like food poisoning very easily. So I don't, right? So it's one of those things like I never thought, like, I think that would be the only hesitation I ever had is like I'm in the middle of Thailand and there's like the street market and I'm like, oh my goodness, that looks so good. And I'm like, you know, maybe not today.
I have to be careful. Yeah.
Right. But it really has been an incredible journey. Like I don't even know. People are always asking me, oh, where do you see your business in December? And I was like, I have no idea because my goals that I set in January, I think in January I was like, okay, I want to be at Stack Market. I've done that already, right? So now
you want to be at what's
at
that?
Stacked Market.
Okay, what does that mean?
So Stack Market is this like container market in Toronto, and it just looked really cool to me, and I was like, okay, I really want to go, right? And I did one of the markets there for 2 months, and it was an amazing opportunity, right? But now I'm looking at from now till December, and I'm like, I have no idea where it's gonna go, right? Because every day new opportunities open up, right?
Yeah.
Every day something else happens, and even for myself, every day I have new ideas, right? So I have to try my best to. Sometimes I have to curb myself because sometimes I'm like, oh, this will be great, this will be great, right? Especially come Thanksgiving and Christmas time, my ideas for the menu, I try my best. I put them all out, and then I have to filter through them, right? Because otherwise, like. I'm making everything.
And you've just said so much that I want to dive into. So I mean, you are such an entrepreneur, my friend. Like because not everybody has goals. But you said, you had goals going into January. You've met most of them. So now, okay, what's up for the rest of the year? You've got goals. You've got ideas. Like that. You've got more ideas than you can do all at once, which is kind of cool. But that can be a challenging process, right? Yes. So when you say I got to filter those ideas. Talk a bit about, if you would, how do you filter those ideas? And being an entrepreneur, like in some ways, this is your own business. You're not at a point yet, but I can honestly, I can so see it coming where you got a staff of lots of people, and a team. But right now it's kind of you, right? So who do you filter? Like, how do you, who's your support with some of these kinds of decisions?
So,
that sort of thing?
I have a few people in my circle who really help for Butter and Spice to be where it is, right? So first and foremost, I have my parents, right?
Yeah.
My dad is always like, you can do it, right? So he's like the cheerleader,
that's cool.
right? And then we have my mom on the administrative side. She gets into the accounting and all that jazz. And then of course you have my grandma. My grandma helps me a lot, right?
How does grandma help?
So I always call her the head of packaging.
Nice.
And
the head of packaging.
The head of packaging. So she stamps all my bags. She folds all my boxes. As well as like even sometimes when it's just her and I who's able to work, she's like I'll have so many orders and she's like, but Marchelle, we're going to get through this. We always get through this, right? So she helps me a lot weighing ingredients out. Like she's the one now, I think she has the brownie recipe memorized. This is right. And then of course I have someone who does my social media. So that was kind of back in November when I was thinking about, okay, growing my business and taking it to the next step, I was like, okay, I need to get a handle of social media. It can't just be my ideas coming, because in November, I was just doing social media how I normally do. I would post once a week and that's it, right? But to really grow your social media account and to make sure that you're getting customers from it, right? You need to put time into it, and I needed to put money into it as well. So I hired someone by the name of Tamar. She helps me with my social media. And she also helps with some of the ideas because she's very creative, right? But sometimes, like, especially when it comes to our menu planning, her ideas, she has a lot of ideas. I have a lot of ideas. So we just put all our ideas on the table, right? And then we go and we're like, okay, what has been done before, right? And 99% of the time, we're both up. Sometimes when we're like menu planning, we're like, what if we do it this way? What if we do it this way? We're always trying to see what has been done before and how can we do it a different way? How can we do it our way, right? Like, for example, our brownie flavor for Christmas, we had a Bailey's and cream brownie, right? We looked at every picture we could see on Google. We just go Bailey's brownie, right? And then we go on Pinterest, Bailey's brownie. What is coming up, right? And then we do the opposite of what is coming up.
Okay.
Right? And then, of course, we add our own flair to it. And it ended up being one of our top sellers for Christmas. And I don't think we ended up taking it off the menu until February.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So we always do it that way. And then even sometimes she'll have ideas and she's like, oh, I think it'd be really cool if we did something like this because this is becoming very popular. Because sometimes it's, okay, we have to also make money at the same time.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. And she was like, oh, these are really popular, right? Like, I think last Christmas, what was very popular, the hot chocolate bombs, right? Okay. With the melted milk, the chocolate, and you stir or whatever, right? And we're like, you know what? We're not going to do it. We're not going to do these hot chocolate bombs because everyone was doing it. So, and even now, right now, we're in the process of planning out our Instagram and TikTok and all that stuff for fall and Christmas, right? Because really and truly, we're trying to get ahead because now I'm entering my full year of business, right? And we're trying to get ahead and just make sure that we're not falling behind because last year was a little bit of catch up, right? Yeah. So we're making sure we have the content beforehand. Like sometimes you see stuff on Instagram, we've filmed it way in advance, right? Right? Which is why people always say it's not real life, right? Like, and I try my best because I know a lot of other business owners are always looking at the competition. I try my best not to look because I think it's similar to when you're writing an essay and they tell you don't look at any other essay, right? Because you end up copying a little bit, right? Yeah. So I try my best not to look at other businesses. I know enough to know that what they're doing and whatever, but I try my best not to look in detail, be like, oh, they're doing this, they're doing great, right? Because I do have to focus on how I want to present my business and how I want it to be, right? And how I want it to grow and what I want to be putting out. So I don't look at other businesses that much because I think you can get pulled in very easily, right, into what everybody else is doing. Right. And I would say a great example of that would be Easter. Right. So Easter, I did these mini egg brownies. Right.
Which were really good. I want to do a promo for your brownies in a moment, but keep going.
Right. So we did mini egg brownies and they were really good and they sold great with our wholesalers. And I think one or two other people ordered them or whatnot. But it was another thing where everybody else is doing mini egg brownies, right? And I was like, oh, Marchelle, like you really did not plan this out very well. Right. So those, I think that Easter was probably the one holiday I was like, okay, I didn't do it the way I did it the other ways.
You weren't as unique on that one as you have been in many. Yeah. Cool,
exactly. Cool. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of pat myself on the back, got back up again. And I was like, okay, Mother's Day, we got this. Right. And we did our Mother's Day afternoon tea box. And I had the idea to do an afternoon tea box back in January for Mother's Day. But I sat down on the menu. I put it on paper. Then I send it to Tamar. And then I'll send it to some friends. And I'll send it to my mom and whatnot. And then I'm like, okay, what can I change? How can this be better? Right. From my mom, it's usually price point. Right?
She's the numbers
she's the numbers person,
like
right? And then I sent it to my best friend, and she was like, "Well, I think that whenever I've had an afternoon tea, it could be done this way, but I always find that she tells me the issues that she's had going to have these different experiences, right?
Yeah.
So then that helps me, okay, if I do it this way, then there's not those issues, right? And if she's having those issues with these experiences, then other people probably are as well, right? And then with Tamar goes, oh my goodness, that menu is amazing. It's so great. Right? And then sometimes she's like, you know what, Marchelle, we can do better. Right? Yeah. Or in her words, she's like, oh, that's basic.
That's basic. We want to be unique.
Exactly.
Man, but I love, you're so wise, right? To get feedback before you go too live with it or too full throttle. And I know you've had packages where you've put stuff out before the time. I think, were there cookies or something you did? Because I know our daughter Leah,
we did sugar.
You put them out as a deal to try it out and give me feedback.
Yeah.
And I just thought you're like really, really brilliant in the way that you're trying to grow your business and just do things really, really well.
Yeah.
And even I like what I'm hearing and what I've observed. Like, how long have you been doing this? By the way, the butter and spice.
Oh my goodness. We are coming up to 1 year this month,
like
or the unofficial.
You're only a year in.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like you've been doing this for years with all that you've done already. And good for you. My goodness.
Yeah.
You are amazing. Like,
Thank you.
I love it. But I love some of the uniqueness with which you're promoting or trying to get your product into people's hands. So it's kind of a cool story, like the way we met, right?
Yeah,
like, our son Cameron was out shoveling driveways this winter, and I guess somehow he knocked on your guys' door, and he ended up shoveling the driveway, and you guys paid him, but you also sent him home with some brownies.
Yes.
And he came home, and like, he loves his food. Like, he's 18, he's a big boy, he loves his food, and so he comes in and he's like, guys, you gotta taste these brownies. Like, and honestly, so our whole family's like, oh my goodness. Like, I'm telling you, like, they really are the best brownies.
So
we got to talk brownies for a minute here. Can we? Like,
go ahead.
Where did this, not to give away any secrets, like, I want to protect you here, but like, where did these brownies come from that you make?
So,
because they are so good, Marchelle.
When I was in culinary school, I loved brownies. Like, growing up, brownies were my dessert.
That's awesome.
Right? Like, for as long as I remember, I've always loved brownies. And who doesn't love a brownie, right? But I would say the recipe, it was kind of like, I stumbled upon a recipe a few years ago and I had it. And like, I always tell my people or my customers to set it in the fridge before they eat it, right? And so I had this recipe and I tried it and I put it in the fridge, and the next day I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Right? This is so good.
Do you love it when you yourself enjoy your own whatever it is that you put out there? That's great.
And then obviously coming back, I was like, okay, this is the recipe, right? And we've kind of built on top of that, right? Like, we have our OG flavor, and
Which is original.
That's, right? Yeah. And a lot of people would think that the original we would sell a lot of it, but it's not our most popular flavor. In fact, I don't bring it to my farmers markets, or I do always get one person who's like, do you just have a regular brownie? I'm like, no.
That's basic.
Exactly. Right. So it's kind of developed over that. And then every season I kind of am so impressed with myself as well, because it changes again. Nice. Right. And I'm kind of pushing the recipe a little bit, because it is all of the brownies. It is the same recipe. We just flavor it differently. And I kind of am learning the boundaries of the recipe as well. Yeah. Right. And learning how far I can take it and what I can't do and what I can do. And it really has been quite incredible to see, even because I'm still using my technical skills, right? And what I know with pastry and baking and whatnot to change the one recipe and make it go in different directions.
Oh, okay. And like, we've ordered several times from you, and love it. Like, I'm amazed at again, the uniqueness of the kinds of brownies that you're making. So here's a fun one, I think. What are the 3 most unique brownies that you've made so far?
Okay, I would say our tahini and Malden sea salt flavor, always and forever be our most unique flavor.
Yeah.
right now on our summer menu, we have our lavender blueberry cheesecake, right, which is a white chocolate brownie.
Oh my gosh.
And it's incredible. We infuse it with lavender in the brownie base, and it's like I said, it's white chocolate base, cheesecake layer, and then a blueberry layer on top with crumbs. Amazing,
Oh my
right?
God.
Always sells out at the markets. And then I would say the one other one, or I guess a few, I would say the chef special, because the chef special changes every week,
Okay.
right? So far for our chef special, we've done a birthday cake flavor. We've done pistachio and olive oil, because I'm learning that I can now use olive oil in my brownie, and it's amazing. We did a Biscoff cookie for our chef special. We did like a death by chocolate chef special. Again, it really has, I would say the chef special has really pushed the boundaries on how far I could take this recipe, right? But I would say those are the top 3 unique ones. I guess the third one is not really one.
That's all right. I love it. I love it. Our guys love there's a cornflake one, I think, right?
Yes.
And there's
the
peanut butter and jam, and there's what was the other one the guys
we
like?
have raspberry dark chocolate.
Yeah.
We have loads, and of course our menu is flipping in a month or so to our fall menu. But yeah, no, it's really been, the cornflake brownie is incredible. It's cornflakes, caramel on top of a dark chocolate brownie.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with that combination.
I just don't know why we aren't sampling brownies in this podcast. We made a mistake. I'm getting hungry. This is so good. This is so good.
I definitely should have brought some.
That's awesome. I love it. Let's shift gears here a little bit. Love to dive into beyond the food, which you're so good at. And I just love the energy that you bring. You just tell your passion. And I love that God has led you to follow your passion. Like
Yes.
that's, man, yeah. So proud of you. That's awesome. That's so cool. That's so cool. But there's a lot more to you, as as we've got to know each other a little bit over the last year or so, and I've been looking at some of your stuff. So just love to dive into some of the why behind you do what you do, and how you do what you do. And so a couple things. One would be, your description on your website talks about being very intentionally named, I think, a Black-owned business. And I love that you named that so intentionally.
Yeah.
And yeah, talk a bit about the significance of that, Marchelle.
So obviously moving off the backs of the incident last year with George Floyd, I wanted to have it be known that this is who we are, right? I don't want people to see us on Instagram and our successes and see that okay, it's just someone has a business. No, we are here. We're a Black-owned business, and we are doing great, right? And that and maybe someone who's thinking about going into baking a pastry, they're like, oh, I can't do this. No one else who looks like me is doing it, right? Yeah. But no, they can. They can be like, oh, well, Butter and Spice is doing it, and they're Black-owned business, so I can do it too, right? Because the idea is that there are tons of Black-owned businesses that are succeeding, right? So I would say that is the why, as well as I think that even in the forefront, if people are like not wanting to work with a Black-owned business, then it's there. You know what I mean? It just kind of cuts out a lot of misinterpretation, and we're coming with full transparency, right? Because believe it or not, there are those businesses who are out there and they don't want to have anything to do with Black-owned businesses, right? So it's kind of, at first my parents were like, maybe you shouldn't put race into this. And I was like, no, we are. We're going to do it. Right? Yeah. Because 99% of the time, sometimes I'll get people call me and they're like, oh, we really want to try your stuff. We want to order all this stuff. I was like, oh, how did you find us? We're like, oh, we found you on a website, and we noticed that you're Black-owned business. You're a Black-owned business, and we really want to support a Black-owned business.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So I think that was that's most 99% of the time that's how people find us. And then sometimes people are like, oh, well, she's so creative, and then they found out after that we're Black owned, right? Because maybe they found us through Instagram,
Sure.
or maybe they found us through, we use the kitchen called Mess Hall. Maybe they found us through Mess Hall, right? So it is very important for me because I really want people to look at us and be like, okay, well, I can be where Marchelle is, or I can be where Butter and Spice is, right? And that's kind of, I have a mentor when I was in high school, Bonnie Gordon, and she says, you can't be afraid of the competition, right? And my goal is not to be like, oh my God, like they're doing it, we have to be better than them. No, my goal is that people grow and they're like, okay, well, we're also at the same level as Butter and Spice, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah. There's an abundance of opportunity for lots of people to do well.
Exactly.
And we don't need to compete in that way. There's the abundance mentality, 100%. And I would hope and pray that, especially after this year that we've been through, where the reality of racism has just been brought to the forefront in a way that should have been brought to the forefront many years ago. And I would hope that people do see that it's a Black-owned business and want to support it as one of those many, many, many steps that we can try to do to defeat systemic racism.
Exactly.
And so, but I can't help but notice that you said not everyone wants to be involved in partnering with a Black-owned business, and I'm really sorry. I just want to say, as a white male, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just so sorry. That grieves me.
I know.
I'm really, really sorry to hear that. Can you tell us a bit about? And I don't not to put anyone under name necessarily, but like what is that? What is that response?
So in terms of, I would say it's not direct. Like sometimes it is direct, right? But I know that. Okay, I would say in terms of my markets, like I'm at a lot of markets now this summer, right? Most of them, when I sell, I'm like, okay, this is good. But sometimes I go to some neighborhoods and some other places where the markets are, and I get the sense that like, oh, we're not going to buy from her, And it's not a direct, we're not going to buy from you. It's like, okay. And then like they keep walking. Whereas other people, they come to our stall and they're like, oh my God, these look amazing, right? Which is usually the general response, where some people, they're kind of like, right? And I remember being at one market and I was like, good morning, because I'm very friendly. I'm like, good morning, how are you? Good morning. And it was an early market. And I think I said good morning to someone and they just kept walking.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. And kind of your gut sometimes in those situations tells you that something more is going on in this one.
Exactly, right? And it's most of the time it's not that way, right? Because like, for example, I've been at a lot of markets in Orangeville and they've been really wonderful. I've been a lot of markets. Most recently, I just went to a market. It is called the Afro-Caribbean Farmers Market. And last Sunday was my first Sunday. It was amazing, right? All the businesses are Black-owned businesses. And of course, it was on a big weekend, Emancipation Day. And it is in Little Jamaica in Toronto.
Wow.
And they're trying to bring back the reggae lane and what it was originally about and whatnot. But it was so incredible to see people of all races there. And they're supporting the market. People are dancing. They're enjoying their food and whatnot. It was so beautiful to see, right? And it's it hurts a little bit for me to think about people looking at that and thinking that it's not a good thing, right? When in reality, everybody could be thriving.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's part of the good news that we want to promote and encourage and drive towards, that God's got lots of space for all people. And especially if there's businesses with that have not been, that not have been supported because of race, man, let's try to counter that. Let's try to, So I'm so glad that you can join us. Now, the other piece that you mentioned earlier, when we think about the why behind what you do, and the how, in some ways, is you mentioned about wanting to be a blessing to the community. And I know you're very intentional about raising up different causes at different times. It could be from, sometimes some of the income going towards that cause. But what are some of the things that are on your heart as you think about not only building a business that's going to be a blessing to the community, some of the ways that you've been trying to work at that?
So, I really want an opportunity to be able to give back to the community, right? It could be anywhere from women's issues to any political issues that are going on. And I believe last year, especially because we were just a couple months old, we never got to participate in a lot of these fundraising opportunities because a lot of them are set up before,
Mm.
right? So by the time it comes to October, people are like, "Oh, well, we're already set to go with
Mhm.
other companies," right? So I'm really looking forward to come October and December, hopefully do some sort of food drive or some sort of like meal or something
Sure.
to be able to maybe give to a family who's not doing as well as I am,
Mm.
right? Or maybe do a food drive or again create a product that I can sell and give all the proceeds to an organization or
Yeah.
whatnot,
Yeah.
right? I wouldn't say there's just one issue
Yeah.
I want to support. There are kind of a lot, right?
I would expect nothing less of you. That entrepreneurial spirit with all those creative ideas, of course, it comes into justice and yeah, all that work.
Exactly, right? And I kind of have to gauge myself and be like,
Yeah.
okay, what am I going to support today?
Yeah.
Right? Where am I going to show my allyship? Where am I going to put the money that I'm fundraising, right? So there are so many issues out there that are support that need money, that need support, right? So it's just kind of taking it month by month and
Yeah.
being like, okay, this month, this is what we're about.
Yeah.
Right. And I try my best not to take on too much because otherwise, like, as you see with my menu planning, it becomes too much.
That's great. That's great. Well,
Yeah.
I know that you are looking to start your own podcast at some point.
Yes.
So yeah, just
Yes.
before we wrap up, I'd love to hear about that.
Of
What's that hopefully looking like? And
So it kind of started with like I was laying awake one night and I was like, I should start a podcast, right? And I was like, okay, but why? What would it be about? And I was like, it would be about what I'm about, and it would be about being a woman in hospitality or
Yeah.
food and beverage, and what it means to be a woman in that environment, and talking about the ups and downs. And I was like, but who would come on that podcast? And I was like, but Marchelle, you know so many people,
Exactly.
right? And you know so many women in food and hospitality. You literally could just ask them, right? And this goes back into the card. And I was like, I have nothing to lose,
Yeah.
right? So I'm hoping whenever we get around to launching it, I'd be able to pull on some of those connections that I've made over the years working in food and beverage, and maybe have some people I used to work with come on, and maybe have some new people who I haven't met yet come
Yeah.
on and tell their story and kind of their experience with food and beverage and what they're doing now or whatnot.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I think it would be awesome.
I
Yeah.
hope
Can't
so.
wait. Yeah. In time as it works out. Can't wait for
Exactly.
that for sure. Well, how can people follow you? How can people support you? How can people hear more about what you're doing and hopefully get some of your product? Yeah.
Yes. So for the day-to-day, I would say you can follow us on Instagram. It is Butter and Spice Bake Shop on Instagram. If you're looking to order brownies, you're going to find us at butterandspice.ca. And those are, I would say, the two main places to find us.
Yeah, right on, right on.
Yeah.
Well, Marchelle, thank you so much for being a part of the Good News
No
podcast
problem.
today. It really is a good news story that's going to get better and better. There's so much potential.
Thank you for having
and you're
me.
such a great leader and just love what you're doing. Yeah, yeah. Can I pray for you before
of
we? Yeah, let's do that. I'd love to
Of
pray
course.
for you and for this beautiful business that you're building. Loving and gracious God, thank you for your calling on Marchelle's life. You can just hear it as she reflects back today on how you got her to where she is today. Continue to give her courage as she leads her business, as she grows her business. And it already is a blessing to this community of Brampton and beyond, and know that it will continue to be, we trust, for years to come. So just bless her every step of the way. Thank you for all that you're doing in and through her life. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Marchelle. Yeah. And thanks everybody for joining us today on the Good News Podcast. As always, great to have you with us, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Wow, I just can't believe all the things that we can cover in less than an hour in a conversation like that. I didn't realize we were going to go so deep into the Black-owned business piece. But so glad that Marchelle has clearly named that's who she is, and that's who Butter and Spice is, and why that's so important. So that was a big piece for me out of that one. Let's continue, friends, to support Black-owned businesses and just really try to bring equality more and more into our world. I love that she started at such a young age, at age 13, selling cupcakes to her own family. Obviously, this is a calling that God has placed on her life from a very, very young age. Man, this girl has so much to offer. Can't wait to see what God's going to do with this beautiful business she's building. Thanks for joining us, friends. All the best to you. God bless you. Please join us next time. Hope to see you again. Don't forget to follow us on Good News with Jamie Holtum on Instagram and subscribe to keep this family of good news people growing. God bless you. Great to be with you again today.